Ohio State 12-2, facing 13-2 Texas.
Welcome in, welcome back. We're the Real Selection Committee. I'm Mike, this is Greg, and we're here to start talking about these playoff teams, and we're going to go in over Ohio State's schedule this year. So we can't do it without going over the first game of this season.
Absolutely.
The Texas Longhorns.
Yeah.
What a great matchup for the first week of the season here. What a monster game. But we want to dive a little bit into Texas here and kind of go over a lot of, their returning starters, questions about this team. There's a lot of unknown answers here because they have a lot of turnover every year because players are getting drafted and stuff like that because, big thing is Ohio State lost 14 players of the draft. Well, Texas lost 12.
Yeah.
So they got to, replenish that depth that they lost here. So let's dive into this a little bit. We'll go in over some of the projected starters and talk about that, and then we'll dive into the matchup. So let's just go over Texas and their starters. Well, I know you have a list.
Like you said, Texas lost a lot of players to the NFL, and my paperwork shows they have a lot of guys making first turns as starters on the offense. So their offense, overall grade really wasn't that great, but I'm not going to use that because we know Texas, much like Ohio State and Alabama and all the other big teams, they're just reloading. But, what we do know is the quarterback's going to be Arch Manning. Okay?
Yes.
And five-star recruit, from the famous Manning family. All the talk about this young man is high. He really hasn't had he's played, but it's not like he's been a starter or gotten great time. So he's going to have some growing pains, but I do believe he's going to end up being really spectacular. The running back is a junior starter from 2024 that gained over 1,000 yards last year, so they're really good at the running back spot. Wide receiver X is a starter from last year, a sophomore. Wide receiver Z is a redshirt freshman who obviously will be making his first turn as a starter. Wide receiver H is a junior, returning starter from last year, so the wide receiving core is okay, but not stellar. Their offensive line, I had a lot of problems with the offensive line because the website I used just did not offer a whole lot on the bios, and offensive linemen don't have stats where you can kind of go in and piece together this, and the other thing. So, they got a redshirt sophomore at left tackle, first turn. Not the position you really want a guy getting his feet wet at, because that's the blind side. Left guard, same thing. Redshirt junior, going to be making his first turn according to what I have. The center was a starter last year, has experience, so that's a good thing as the center goes. Right guard, 2-year starter in 2024-2023, so solid at right guard. Right tackle's a sophomore. Was a 5-star recruit. He'll be making his first turn according to my paperwork. So the offensive line is going to be a who knows, right? Tight end, redshirt freshman, also first turn as a starter. So a lot of question marks on that offense, but we do know with Texas, I'm sure all these guys are fantastic players. So while the grade is down, they're still going to be a competitor on offense. But the defense came in really strong with their grade. Defensive end, a senior, 2-year starter, was honorable mention in the Big 12 in 2023. The nose tackles, a transfer from Purdue, who had a solid 2024 season. Wasn't necessarily a starter, but did play well when he played. Defensive tackle, sophomore making his first turn. So that's the one spot on the defensive line where they're a little weak. Buck linebacker, starter from 2024. Middle linebacker, very solid. 2-year starter 2024, 2023. Was a second-team All-American in 2024. First-team SEC 2024. An honorable mention in the Big 12 in 2023. That's Anthony Hill. Very solid linebacker. So
He's an All-American.
Yes. That's all you need to know there. The weak side linebacker, also a very solid redshirt senior, 3-year starter. For 1 year for Texas, 2 years for UTSA. Third team SEC in 2024, first team American Athletic Conference in 2023. His name's Trey Moore, another solid linebacker. So the linebacking spot is definitely loaded. Mm-hmm. Their front cornerback's a senior, returning starter from 2024. The free safety's a redshirt senior, 2-year starter, was honorable mention in the Big 12 in 2023. The back safety, whatever BS means, for this purpose, sophomore making his first turn. So maybe BS is what needs to be there, right? No offense.
Right.
The back cornerback's a junior, returning starter from 2024. And the nickel back's a junior, returning starter from 2024. So the defensive backfield is pretty solid. They came in at a 61. So the defense looks really strong. The offense is going to have some work to do. They're going to be, but we both know that Texas isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like you mentioned, the quarterback obviously is Arch Manning. Running back, they had Quintavion Wisner, who played last year.
Yeah.
They lost their big stud. Jaden Blue went to the NFL, but Wisner got a lot of playing time, so they're solid at the running back. Plus, they're going to get back this C.J. Baxter, who had a knee injury. Yeah. He'll be back. Wide receivers, they lost the 2 to the draft.
Right.
And then Ryan Wingo is going to be their big stud. Plus, they got a transfer. DeAndre Moore Jr. is coming in. So we know Texas is going to have a decent offense.
Yeah.
Like you said, really the biggest returning starter on the offensive line, it was one guy, DJ Campbell. The rest of them are kind of guys that got playing time, fill-in kind of guys.
Yeah.
But they're going to have a decent offensive line. They're going to have growing pains there for sure. Like you said, getting on the defensive side, Ethan Burke is a stud on their offensive line. And then you mentioned their linebackers. Yeah. This front 7 is pretty solid.
Yeah.
They're going to have a good team here.
Yeah.
And then, the back end is also pretty darn good. I know, so it's going to be a fun game there as far as that goes.
Right.
And get into the recruiting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the recruiting.
Well, they had the number 1 class in the SEC and the number 1 class overall. So can't get a whole lot better than that, can you?
No.
5 5-star recruits, 14 4-star recruits, 6 3-star recruits. Players everywhere. I mean, rather than try to go over the positions, they got a player just about everywhere, 5 or 4-star, solid. They do have, 2 really good backup running backs, as you mentioned, a backup defensive tackle that saw a good time, transfer from North Carolina, a linebacker from Arkansas that played good time. So linebacker, they actually got 2 backup linebackers, and that's already a strength.
Yeah.
So they got 2 solid guys behind them that these are guys that played last year in college football, and a safety. So, this team to me, while the overall grade on the offense isn't real strong, they're going to be a threat. Mm-hmm. They're going to be a threat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that like the recruiting class, they had 4 5-stars. I mean, they had the most 5-stars committed kids. So they're obviously going to be loaded there. They got that Jonah Williams, who is a safety, they're acting like he's an All-American. He's a super talented kid.
Right.
And Justice Terry is on the defensive line. He's going to get to play time because Texas lost 3 guys to the draft. Yeah. So they got a lot of guys. They got some transfers coming in on D-line that are going to contribute as well. Texas is going to be no joke in this. And the funny thing is that all you heard was Texas and the SEC, they're not going to live up to the hype there. Yeah. And all they did in the first year in the SEC was they won the SEC, right?
Well,
they didn't win the championship, but they had the best record.
Yeah, they had the best showing in the playoffs for the SEC team. They struggled with Georgia for some reason last year. But to your point,
they carried the banner of this team.
They carried the SEC banner better than the rest of the SEC did, and all we heard out of them goofball SEC fans were, "You ain't coming into our conference and dominating." Hey, you know what? Your conference ain't what it used to be, boys.
Right.
And you best look. You got Oklahoma's going to be better this year. You got Texas, that we know is already dominating. You got Texas A&M that has played very admirably in that conference. And Missouri's another team that came out of the Big 12. These are all teams that infiltrated the SEC, that no one can go in there and play good, and they've all kind of played fairly well. So, enough.
Yeah.
You know, SEC's a great conference. We're not going to sit here and act like it ain't, but SEC fans, understand, you're not as great as you think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that they kind of dodged the bullet if you're looking into their schedule this year, SEC, they left out Alabama. They're not playing all the great teams, Ole Miss and all those schools, but they do have a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah.
You know, they got they got Florida on there, who's going to be much improved. They do play Georgia, and they got A&M. So they got quite a battle in, you know, with Ohio State on there. So your margin of losses in that schedule are not very good.
I mean, SEC, you're playing in the SEC, you're playing a good schedule.
Right.
Plus, you're playing Ohio State in the out-of-conference. But one thing, you know, you mentioned they dodged Alabama and Mississippi. How did Alabama and Mississippi do last year with outstanding quarterbacks?
Right.
And they're in flux this year. So maybe Alabama and Ole Miss missed out on Texas. Mm-hmm. You know, just food for thought.
All right. So now let's go in. Let's talk about this matchup here. You know, it's a noon kickoff game, which is surprising that they didn't try to get this game on a prime time, which I guess Ohio State tried to get this game moved to a Sunday night primetime game, and Texas denied this.
Right.
I don't know why Texas did not want to, you know, go on to a primetime game for that, which is kind of crazy.
Well, they might have felt, hey, this is the time you gave us. This is the time we started preparing for. We don't want to change anything. Because the slightest change could go into Ohio State's favor because you're at Ohio State.
Right.
Not that the change was meant to be a favor for Ohio State, but you're going there. So I can't blame Texas for saying, hey, look, you know, we've already made plans for this. We want it where it is.
Right.
But, you know, to your point, though, that's a game that should be in prime. College football should have thought of that.
Right.
You got one of the best games of the year, potentially, and you put it on noon.
Right.
Come on, guys. You know, get a brain.
So, yeah, okay. So we do know this game is going to be loaded with NFL talented kids on there that are soon to be drafted. You know, like I said earlier, the Bucs had 14 kids go in, and Texas had 12. So the start of this game, I think they may struggle trying to figure out who's who and, you know, where all these new guys are going to be plugging and playing. For me, my biggest question is going to be Texas on the Texas side. Is how is Arch going to handle this? You know, this hype up, you know, these, you know, Mr. World-Class talent.
Yeah.
And how's he going to handle facing some of these SEC schools? Because let's say he only got 2 games he started in last year that everybody thought that he's the greatest. Yeah. They played in powerhouse Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of sample size you got out of Arch Manning.
Well, you know, not much of a sample size, but you know, let's both those schools are FBS. Louisiana Monroe is not a very good football team, and who was the other one you mentioned? Mississippi State. They were bad last year.
Yeah.
But you know, hey, for a brand new quarterback coming in, you're playing against FBS competition. If you go out there and you play well, you got to take that as a victory. Arch Manning's he's untested. This is going to be huge pressure on him because, you know, both him and Julian saying, you don't want to lose that first game. Mm-hmm. You know, so even though we both know whichever team loses, the game probably won't hurt them too badly in the grand scheme of things. You still have plenty of time to recover. But, yeah, I think Arch Manning's going to do just fine. And like I say, to me, the SEC over the last couple years seems like it's kind of come down. You know, not the, oh my God, it's the SEC like it was the 5-6 years prior where no one could touch them. I think Arch Manning's going to do just fine, but there is a lot of pressure on him and Julian Sand in this first week. Mm-hmm. A lot of pressure. Mm-hmm.
So the other question, too, was on the OSU side, the Ohio State side, is how are they going to handle with the loss of both offense coordinator and defense coordinator? Chip Kelly goes to the NFL, and then you got Jim Knowles going to Penn State. So you're going to have to implement some new offense and new defense here, you know.
Well, I don't want to make it out like the coaches don't matter, because we know they do. Mm-hmm. But Brian Hartline's been in the Ohio State family for years. Yeah. So he was on that coaching staff last year. I don't think he's going to change a lot. Mm. You know, and whatever he changes, these players have been around him. You know what I mean? So the changes he makes are only going to be better for the Buckeyes. It's not like he's coming from somewhere else and has to figure it all out.
Right.
Now, the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, I'm not going to sit here and slight the man. Obviously, he's a good coach. Mm. But what did he do in the Big 12?
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
Is he not the guy that orchestrated those 2 huge blowout losses to Michigan? Was he not the defensive coordinator when Michigan ran up and down the field on the Buckeyes?
Right.
Made us look stupid?
Right.
Come on now. The coach is what it is. Matt Patricia is coming in from the NFL.
Right.
Enough said.
Yeah, and he's had decent runs in the NFL as a defensive coordinator, so certainly. I think it's a good move there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's go into these matchups. We got the quarterback position. I'd like to say who's got the edge and who, you know. We got Arch Manning versus Sayin. Arch Manning has limited playing time. He's going to have a makeshift offensive line in front of him. Yeah. So, you know, we're going to see how that goes. One thing with Julian Sayin, that Ohio State has not announced who the starting quarterback is. Everyone believes it's Julian Sayin, but Lincoln Kienholz has had a pretty good spring. They're really excited about his running ability. Yeah. He's a little bit of a bigger kid, strong arm, fast, can move. So they haven't committed to Sayin yet, but it looks like he's going to get the start. But the one thing I want to say, and I just want to touch on, and let's go back to last year.
Excuse me.
When Will Howard transferred in from Kansas State, you know, Ryan Day did not commit to him from day one as soon as he stepped foot on campus. Right. They kind of waited till the very end to announce, you know, Will Howard as the starter, because you remember they had Devin Brown and those, you know, and he transferred to Aaron Nolan and those guys, and they never said Will Howard had the starting job right till the start of the season. Right. So let's just pump the brakes, because I'm kind of excited to see how Julian Sayin's going to be, because let's just face it, you're handing the keys over to the Ferrari right here with that wide receiver room with all those studs on there. I would think that all you had to go in there and facilitate the ball and just pass it around and be all right.
Well, let's say it this way. It's kind of a 2-part answer for me. It's going to sound like I'm taking the low or high road, but I think when I say this the way I say it, it'll make sense. Arch Manning would get the nod as far as the experience to this point. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't think that's wrong to say. Arch Manning's going to be just fine. The problem for Arch Manning is he does not have the players. We know the wide receiving core at Ohio State is much stronger than Texas's. And that's not to slight Texas's players at all. But let's face it. You know, I think Ennis would be the best receiver on Texas, and he's the third option.
Brandon Ennis, yes.
And you know, he's got to hold off all them other studs. Mm-hmm. So, and the offensive line, Texas's looks like it's got some decent, but some guys making the first turn, where Ohio State's is 3 solid interior players that played last year and 2 4-star transfers coming in. Mm-hmm. So, the team itself offensively is So, I mean, to me, it's a toss-up. I probably, because of the players, have to go Sayin. But, you know, you can't, not to sound like we're homering out, you know, Arch Manning's going to be just fine.
Yeah. To me, I think Ohio State's offensive line is going to be a little bit better than Texas. They're a little more improved. Plus, you know, like you said, they do have pretty much the guys that were there last year. They got a lot of playing time due to injuries. Yeah. You know, so I think the offensive line, I'm going to give the little nod to Ohio State.
Absolutely.
But at the quarterback position, when you don't have the quarterback set in stone right now going into the start of the season, might be a little scary. So you almost want to give Texas the nod there as far as having a little bit of advantage at that position.
Yeah.
I think Sayin is going to be just fine as a starting quarterback. So we'll give the edge to Texas in that. So let's talk about the running backs here. You know, you got Ohio State that has to replace the two super studs that went into the NFL with Tavian Henderson and Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah.
But Texas lost their big star that scored 2 touchdowns against them in the Cotton Bowl, Jaden Blue.
Yeah.
So, you know, here we have this battle here. How do you see that?
Oh, the running back's Texas. Because the guy from Texas, I just said, rushed for 1,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
As 1B.
Yeah, Wisner did have a solid year, but I'm kind of excited about James, I call him People's Choice.
Yeah, he's
and C.J. Donaldson, who's a transfer from West Virginia, who is looking pretty outstanding coming into training camp. He lost some weight. They say he looks fast.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be a battle there. So
Sure.
To me, this is a tie. This is a toss-up. I'm not giving an edge because I like Ohio State's offensive line better than Texas, and I think that these running backs Ohio State has are just as good as
I think I like Peoples. And here again, being Ohio State fans, we've seen Peoples.
Yes.
And Peoples has played well when he got his opportunity for being the third string behind 2 stud running backs last year. And the kid from West Virginia, if I remember correctly, has like 1,600 yards rushing.
Yeah, he had 1,000 yards
two solid seasons. But if we go off just the position, what the guy's accomplished, the kid from running back or Texas is better. However, to your point, because your points are right too, the offensive line changes the whole part of that. So, but if we just go position, I'm going Texas. But you know, as we've already given Ohio State the nod on the offensive line, so it's not even close in my eyes.
Right. Yeah, and plus they got another running back that I love his name, Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson might sneak in a few running plays for Ohio State. And
He absolutely will.
I think he's going to be a pretty darn good running back for Ohio State.
Well, let's look at it like this. If Peoples got running time last year with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins,
he's going to get some
There's
time.
no way Bo Jackson isn't going to get some time. And not to say, you know, Peoples and the kid from West Virginia, I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
C.J. Donaldson.
Yes. Both solid players. But they're not Judkins and Travion Henderson. So, yes, Bo Jackson will see some time.
Yeah. All right, so now let's move on, and this is a pretty much easy edge here to the wide receiver position.
No. Don't even talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, let's just move on.
Texas has decent players, so not
Ryan Wingo and DeAndre are going to be good, and Texas is going to be able to throw the ball with Arch Manning. They're going to, you know, he loves throwing the deep ball. They're going to throw the ball. But without a doubt, Ohio State has the #1 wide receiving core in college football.
Yeah.
They will always get the advantage over any team in there. I don't care who your quarterback is. He's going to be able to get him the ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the wide receivers, it's not even close. And the tight end, for that matter, is not even close.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, offense is easily the Buckeyes overall.
Yeah. And then let's move on. Let's go on the defensive side here. You know, people want to say Ohio State lost so much. You know, their defense is going to struggle. But you got to look at Texas lost some too. Now, as far as you want to do it as a group, as a whole, Texas has better studs up front. Their front 7 is actual guys that got playing time, have been there. Ohio State's got to introduce some new bloods. They got a couple transfer guys that are going to come in and play well. But, you know, Texas,
I would probably give Texas the nod as it sits right now heading into the season at the defensive line. Not a huge one, but enough to say, I think they're better than us there.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. I don't want to shortchange Ohio State's defense because I'm kind of excited.
Yeah.
I think the guy, Bo Atkinson, they got transfer from North Carolina, is going to, I think he's going to be a superstar for Ohio State. Their only weakness is their D tackle in there, but I think that they're going to be able to be fine.
Well,
you know, because they don't have much playing time, although they did get some playing time, but they're still going to struggle. Linebackers, Ohio State obviously is not as good as Texas. Texas has their All-Americans.
Yeah.
Ohio State has
2 solid ones.
Yeah.
But not as good.
Yeah, Sonny Styles tore it up last year in the playoff season there, and linebacker, he's going to be good. Back end for me, I'm kind of excited about Ohio State. You got the best player on probably both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs.
Yeah. Well, I will say it this way. We got the best player of the group, but I say the defensive backfield's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Because Texas is strong back there, too.
Let's go back to that playoff game where Texas stopped. Jeremiah Smith had 1 catch for 3 yards. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think he's going to want about 8 catches for 100 and some yards. I think he's going to have a decent
I think
day.
they'll still
try to factor him.
But Jeremiah Smith won't get shut down again. But Texas's back end is pretty strong as well. We have the best player in the back end, but I would say it's toss up in the back because we have the cornerback who's solid if he doesn't give away the game with penalties.
Yeah.
But, I think both teams are solid on the defensive backfield. Texas's defense is slightly stronger than Ohio State's.
All right, let's do a little way too early prediction. One score. Let's see. Who do you have in this game here?
Well, I think Ohio State sneaks by. And I think Texas, it's going to be tough because Texas is going to want revenge. Because if you recall, Texas was 2 yards away from tying the game up. And they had a bad play call. Or they got stopped on the run. They got stopped on the run.
Yeah.
Then they had the bad play call that lost them 6 or 7 yards.
Incomplete
and then the
pass,
strip sack.
and then they had a strip sack
And,
on 4th down.
that took the game from being tied to a 2-touchdown Ohio State advantage. But I do think Ohio State, I originally thought Texas was better until I started studying Texas. Texas's offense has a lot of work to do. More work to do than Ohio State's.
Yeah.
So that to me is the difference. The defenses, while Texas is better on defense, I think Ohio State is much better on offense. I think if I had to pick a score, I'd probably say 28-24 Ohio State.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, this first matchup is a great matchup. I mean, they're both going to have to work out some kinks. I think it might start out slow because they're trying to figure out offensive line, this and that, and trying to make these parts. I don't think it's the end of the season by losing the first game. The loser of this game still has a lot of season left to play and can continue. I think both these teams are playoff teams.
Yeah.
Both these teams are. I'm going to go, and I know I'm going to be a homer here. I'm going with Ohio State in this game. 1, they're at home, and 2, I'm excited about their defense. I know everybody's kind of down on them because they lost so much, but what they've replaced are players and are good players. Plus this offense, if Sayan can at least get the ball and move it around and they can push and run a little bit, I think they win this game here. I'm going to go with like 31-27 as a score here. I think they win this game just on that they have a little more talent. I want to say I'm more excited about. A lot of people are downplaying Ohio State. They can't do it because they got a new offense coordinator, which he's been there. Brian Hartline's been able to bring in the best kids in recruiting wise. Yeah. And you got a defense coordinator who's been in the NFL. He knows that. You got a, game plan. You still got Ryan Day, who's been, who's been a solid person on this team. I'm going to go with Ohio State winning this game.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say about the coaches. Coaches matter. And Texas has a good staff. We don't know as much about Texas because we're not Texas fans. What we do know...
Shark is a good coach.
Yes, yeah. What we do know is Texas is a solid program and they're on the rise. Mm-hmm. And Texas could win this game. We both know that.
Oh, for sure.
But what we see is what it'll come down to is what we're saying. Both our scores show. We think it'll come down to one possession where Ohio State will get a touchdown and Texas will get a field goal. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, this game, regardless of how it goes for either team, is going to be a huge help to both of them because you're playing a team that you both think will be playoffs.
Sure.
So you're starting off as tough as you can get.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't dislike Texas, and I think the Buckeyes are just a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say what everybody says that you watch out there, it's going to come down to turnovers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, whoever makes the most mistakes, I think will be the difference in this game. You know, who's going to who's going to create a turnover, who's going to turn the ball over, a fumble, an interception, a bad timing, because both these teams are a powerhouse team in college football. They're playoff worthy, and if not nothing else, they're at least national champ worthy.
Yeah,
both these teams.
And let's not forget, there are a lot of new starters, new faces for both teams. And start of the year, big game, butterflies are going to be flying all over the place.
It's going to be a boxing match to start.
It's going to
figure
be
it
tough.
out.
And to your point, you know, mistakes will happen. Who makes the least? That's going to be what it boils down to. But we both feel, not just because we're Buckeye fans, I think Ohio State grades better than Texas slightly.
Oh yeah, it's a slight edge.
Shaven whiskers, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So hey, that's going to wrap it up for today. I enjoyed doing this, and what a great first matchup here.
Oh,
it's going to
boy.
be fun.
Yeah.
You know, both teams will not be out with a loss, but it'll be a fun game to watch. Please like and subscribe, comment, let us know what you think score-wise, or who's going to win, who's got the better edge, anything like that. You know, we'd love to hear from you. We definitely want to hear what you guys think.
Yep.
And I'm excited. College football is right around the corner.
Boy, I can't wait.
Yep. So we'll see you next time.
We'll see it.
Peace.
Out.